Okay, so we're back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And this time I think we're looking at something pretty interesting.
Really?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of a
It's called Mandorijon, right?
Mandorijon Wellness Center.
Right, and it seems to be this sort of
It's a place.
blend of
Yes.
ancient practices.
Ancient and modern.
And modern techniques.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm really interested to see what you think of this.
Yeah, so it looks like they're offering all kinds of services, and I think we're looking at maybe a brochure or something like that, a promotional piece from them.
Right.
But there's a lot here, right? We see sound healing. We see something called puncture.
I love that name.
Which is a very clever name.
Yeah.
Ayurvedic coaching.
Yeah.
There's even an Urim and Bronchode energetic chair.
Yeah, that's pretty out there.
Yeah, that one.
For me.
Yeah, that one definitely jumped out at me as well.
And then also some more traditional things like Reiki and massage, so.
Right. It's a real mix of things. Like you were saying, kind of ancient and modern blended together.
Yeah, and I think what really struck me was this idea of puncture.
Right.
I mean, it's very clever wordplay, obviously, playing on acupuncture, but with sound.
Yeah. And this is actually something that's become pretty trendy recently, this idea of sound healing. And it is rooted in these very ancient practices, using things like Tibetan singing bowls, crystal pyramids, gongs, things like that.
I've done a sound bath before.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't really sure about the whole energy flow aspect of it.
Right.
But I have to say, I found it incredibly relaxing.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people report with sound healing is this deep sense of relaxation.
Right.
And it makes sense because sound is vibration. And our bodies are essentially vibration as well. So there's something very powerful about that resonance that can happen.
Right. And even if it's not something that we fully understand scientifically, it seems like there's something to be said for just the experience of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is growing research on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, looking at how certain frequencies can actually influence brainwave activity.
Wow.
Reduce stress hormones, even promote cellular healing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it seems like Mandorijon is really tapping into that with their puncture.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to kind of brand it in their own way.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Now, something else that caught my eye here was this Ayurvedic coaching.
Right.
That seems like a very different approach from something like sound healing.
It is a very different approach.
Yeah.
So Ayurveda is a traditional Indian system of medicine that goes back thousands of years.
Wow.
And it looks at health as a balance of energies.
Okay.
Or what they call doshas in the body.
Interesting.
There are three main doshas. You have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And each one is associated with different physical and mental characteristics. So an Ayurvedic coach will help you figure out what your dominant dosha is.
Right.
And then give you personalized advice.
Oh, wow.
On things like...
So it's really tailored to...
It's very tailored.
The individual.
Yes.
Interesting.
So it could be diet, exercise, sleep, stress management.
Right.
All aimed at kind of bringing your system into balance.
Yeah, it seems like this personalized approach to wellness is becoming more and more popular.
It is.
Moving away from these one-size-fits-all solutions.
Right, because we're all so different.
Exactly.
What works for one person may not work for another.
Right.
So Ayurveda really takes that into account.
But I guess it also requires more individual effort, right?
It does. You have to be willing to understand your own constitution and
engage with it.
And make changes based on that.
Okay, so moving on to something a little more...
A little more out there.
Yeah, a little more out there.
Right.
This Urim and Bronchode energetic chair.
Yes.
I have to admit, this one's a bit of a head-scratcher for me.
Yeah.
Living light frequencies to release trauma.
It sounds very sci-fi, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Well, I mean, from what they say in the brochure here, it sounds like they're claiming that this chair uses specific light frequencies to stimulate cellular change, which can then potentially release deeply held trauma and even promote spiritual alignment.
Okay, now, the idea of, releasing trauma with light is really fascinating.
It is.
I have to wonder if it's a little bit oversimplified.
Right.
Trauma is so complex.
It is a very complex issue.
And to think that you could just sit in a chair and have it all go away.
Right. It does seem a bit
too good to be true.
Too good to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with any of these things, it's important to be discerning, to really look at the evidence.
Right.
There is research being done on energy work and light therapy.
Okay.
But, we need to be careful about making grand claims.
Yeah, and not just taking things at face value.
Exactly.
Right.
Be critical thinkers about it.
Now, on a more familiar note, they also offer Reiki and massage therapy.
Right. So those are a little more mainstream.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how they combine those with these more unconventional practices.
Yeah, it's a really eclectic mix.
It is.
Can you just remind us briefly what Reiki and massage therapy are all about?
Sure. So Reiki is based on this idea that there's a universal life force energy, and the practitioner can channel that energy into the client.
Okay.
Through their hands.
That's interesting.
And it's very gentle, non-invasive.
Right.
And it's really about promoting relaxation and facilitating the body's own natural healing abilities.
Okay.
And then massage therapy, of course, is more about working with the muscles and the soft tissues to relieve tension, improve circulation, and again, promote well-being.
So it seems like Mandorijon is really trying to offer a little something for everyone.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
They're really presenting themselves as this gateway to self-discovery and enhanced well-being.
Right.
With this diverse menu of services.
So what do you think? Would you be tempted to try something like the Urim Bronco chair?
I'm always curious to try new things.
Right.
But I definitely want to do more research.
Yeah. Understand the science behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And see if there are any, credible studies that support the claims.
Right.
But I think it's great that they're offering such a variety.
Yeah.
Because it gives people options.
Right. And it really comes down to personal preference.
Absolutely.
You know what resonates with you, what you're comfortable with. And I think that's a good takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah.
As we've been exploring Mandorijon, all these different services.
Right.
It's really about doing your research, finding what feels right for you.
Yeah.
And approaching it with a healthy dose of curiosity.
And skepticism.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot out there.
Yeah.
In the wellness world.
But not everything is created equal.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
That's good.
Thanks for joining me on another deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.